In this video, I want to share my 5 biggest filmmaking mistakes I made when I first started out as a filmmaker. These are the tips I wish I could share with my younger self, as it would have saved me a lot of time and frustration. When I first picked up my parents' Handycam over 20 years ago, I was overflowing with filmmaking enthusiasm, but I had very little talent or skill. I just filmed anything and everything that I found interesting or exciting. Since then, I've had the opportunity to make commercials for brands such as Google and Canon, and create documentaries that have gone on to win awards and have screened around the world. But because I had no mentor when I started out, I made a lot of mistakes, and it took a long time for me to get to where I am today. And that's why I'm relaunching my YouTube channel, as I want to give you the confidence, knowledge and skills to help you overcome these roadblocks that stop you from making a film or even getting started. Whether that's an independent documentary, a short film, or a piece of content for social media. I'm going to be showing you everything that I've learnt over the last 10 years of working as a professional documentary filmmaker and commercial director. I'll be sharing both the highs and the lows of my personal journey, and I'll unlock some of the mysteries around the techniques of filmmaking and how to craft an engaging story that keeps audiences on the edge of their seats. This is the YouTube channel I wish existed when I first picked up a camera and was there throughout my whole filmmaking journey. It can be hard admitting that you've made a mistake, especially if you're an experienced professional. But we all make mistakes, as we're all human, and as long as we acknowledge our mistakes, apologize to anyone that it might have affected negatively, and learn from them, it's the most effective way to improve and grow. Even today, 20 years after I picked up my first camera, I'm still making mistakes and trying to work out how I can improve and get better. I'm now going to run through the 5 biggest filmmaking mistakes that I made when I started out, and the lessons that I learned from each of these. Not creating a shot list. When I first started making films, I'd get so excited about an idea that I'd just pick up a camera and start filming, but I didn't spend any time working out the shots that I wanted, or any time planning the shoot. I would just go out and film. But then I would get to the edit, and I'd feel overwhelmed, because there was so much footage, and because I hadn't spent any time planning the shoot, it wasn't very good. It was just a jumbled mess. And instead of making something that I was really proud of, I would just give up on editing the film and then start filming the next project, again without much planning or preparation. I'd get stuck in this constant loop, and because I didn't finish any of these projects I filmed, I just felt like a failure. And then I found out about shot lists, and I would create a shot list before each shoot. And this changed everything. I began to visualize how I wanted the film to look, kind of angles I wanted to use, and how this would all fit together in the final edit. This one simple task completely changed my relationship to filmmaking, and because I put more time into thinking about the different shots I wanted to film, my shots were a lot better. Filming didn't take as long, and the shots I did film were a lot more focused, so editing was much faster. So when you get to planning your next film, make sure you write a list of all the different angles and perspectives that you want to capture your story from. Focusing on techniques rather than story. I remember making one of my first films. It was a short film called Lost on Motohaku. I had big ambitions for this movie. I wanted it to win awards and be shown all around the world. I put everything I had into this film. But the issue was I didn't spend much time on the story, and I was much more focused on the special effects and the visual elements, and because of this, it wasn't very good. But I was 15 and all I was thinking about was copying my favourite movies with epic helicopter shots and exciting action sequences. So I was in for a rough ride. When it came to the premiere and awards night for the film, I felt like I was a huge failure, as the film didn't win any awards, and it wasn't very well received. I'd put all this time and effort into making this film, and I'd failed in what I'd set out to do. But that was because I didn't know anything about character arcs and the 3-act structure, which are important elements to help you make an engaging film that keeps audiences on tenterhooks. As soon as I started learning about the hero's journey and different ways to structure my films, it changed everything. Audiences no longer looked bored when they were watching my films. Instead, they would lean forward, completely enthralled in the film. And this simply came down to me knowing what my character wanted and identifying the obstacles they had to go through in order to get this want. Not using the rule of thirds. When I first started making films, I would just capture what was in front of me. So if there was something interesting in front of me here, or there was a subject, I would just put my camera up and press record. My composition wasn't very cinematic, And then I discovered the rule of thirds, and this changed everything. The rule of thirds is one of the most useful composition techniques in cinematography. It involves mentally dividing up the width and the height of your frame into thirds, using 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. You then position your subject or the important elements in your scene along these lines, or at the points where they meet. In fact, you may have noticed how the iPhone camera app even does this for you automatically when you go to crop a photo. The reason to use the rule of thirds is that more often than not, an off-center composition is more interesting to look at and looks more natural than one where the subject is placed in the center of frame. The rule of thirds doesn't apply in every situation, and sometimes breaking it can result in a much more interesting and eye-catching shot. So I encourage you to experiment and test out different compositions, even if they go against any of the rules that you've learned here today. Not making time for passions outside of filmmaking. When I first discovered filmmaking, I was obsessed. All I would think about is how to make films and how I could get better as a filmmaker. But as a result, I didn't make any time for my other passions, such as the outdoors and nature. This meant I had nothing to make films about, because I hadn't really lived in the real world. So all I ended up doing was making films about other filmmakers. It wasn't until I spent less time making films and more time living, doing other things that I'm really passionate about, that I had ideas and things I wanted to make films about. It's important to focus on filmmaking and get better at your craft, but it's also really important to make time for your other passions, and this will feed into your filmmaking work and make you a better filmmaker. I said yes to everything. When I first moved to England from New Zealand, I would say yes to every single project that came my way, whether that was being a runner and making teas, or a camera assistant, or shooting behind the scenes. I just was obsessed with getting involved with as many projects as I possibly could. I didn't think it mattered that I wasn't getting paid much, or that it wasn't a role that I enjoyed. I just thought as long as I worked hard and said yes to every single job, new opportunities would come, and eventually I'd get the opportunity to be paid to make films for brands and production companies. How wrong I was. Instead, I just kept getting offered the same roles over and over again. Because I was saying yes to every job, I ended up working 90-hour weeks, and sometimes I'd have so many jobs that I'd skip a night or two of sleep and end up burning out and not being able to get out of bed for a few days, as I was so unwell. It wasn't until a few years of doing this and burning out over and over and over and over and again, so many times, that I came across the 80-20 rule. So I decided to apply this rule to myself and just focus on my highest value activity, which at the time was building out my portfolio. I also began saying no to the low-paying jobs and just saying yes to the high-paying jobs. This meant it opened up time to really focus on my portfolio and have work that I could show brands and other clients that potentially wanted to hire me. At first it felt pretty risky saying no to jobs, but the rewards were worth it. Before long, it resulted in me working with a number of big-name brands, as they loved my portfolio and wanted me to create films for them in my style for their brand. By continuing to follow the 80-20 rule, I'm now able to focus on making documentaries and this YouTube channel, which I'm really passionate and excited about. And I'm not working such crazy hours, which when I did that was unproductive and also really unhealthy. Instead, I'm working smarter and not harder. Making a film is such an exciting and intense process. It can also be really hard. And that's why I've created this channel, to help you on your journey and to help you overcome the common roadblocks that stop filmmakers from starting or completing their films. And remember, if you have an idea for a film, I encourage you to get started and not be afraid to fail. Take that leap of faith and just begin. I'll see you in the next video. See you guys later.